Come on, let's give Jesus a great big ovation. How about that? Let's do that. Man, you can be seated. What an honor. Pastor Obed, man, unequivocally the coolest dude in ministry. Definitely the sharpest dressed man in ministry. I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to be with Pastor Obed. I got to get a new outfit. And she was like, don't try. Me trying would be bad. Me in white pants would be really bad. I didn't wear cowboy boots. I wore boots with zippers. So, I mean, I'm getting there. I'm wearing cowboy boots tomorrow night, though. So I knew I'd be standing a lot. Hey, what an honor to be with you guys. And Pastor Lisette, what a blessing to be with you guys. Let's give them a great big hand for the heart that they have for people. What an honor, man. It's an honor. And then I will tell you, these kind of rooms make me a little nervous. Just preaching to the saints, lost people, I don't get really nervous. But talking to pastors and leaders, I get a little nervous because I'll tell you this, man. I'm a church boy, and pastors have always been my heroes. And what you guys deal with and what you go through and what you carry on your shoulders is insurmountable. And the way that you do it with grace and a smile on your face, to know that there is a target on you that's bigger than what people realize, and that I get to stand before you and do my best to encourage you and to champion your cause. And if you've got team here, to try to help your team understand what the senior pastor carries is a big thing. I will tell you this, I'm a baby senior pastor, okay? Y'all, I'm a toddler, all right? We're 3 years old. Our church is 3 years old, and I didn't know until I knew. You know what I mean? You don't know until you know. I'm a fourth generation pastor, and I remember calling my dad on the day we launched our church, the day I became a senior pastor, and telling him, man, I'm sorry. I love you. I didn't know it was this heavy. And it's a physical weight you carry. It's a physical weight you carry. How many senior pastors do we have in the building? Would you just raise your hand? Can we give them all a great big hand, man? We'll honor you guys. Honor you. And if you're on staff at a church or you're here and your pastor brought you here, you ought to say thank you, because they see something in you. They want to invest in you. And it's my job to try to help them and to try to help you as well, to understand ministry. Here's what I will tell you. The day's going to go great if you won't have any sacred cows today, okay? If you just go ahead and sacrifice those things, and let's learn how to reach people, and let's learn how to serve better, and I think that'll help. Also, if you'll write your questions down, you see there's some pieces of paper on the table. There's no way that we're going to be able to get to all the questions today if you're good question askers. I tell our staff all the time, if I ever put anybody up in front of you and they say, do you have any questions? And you don't have any questions, you're fired. Because if you think you're smarter than the people that I put in front of you, you shouldn't be on this team. You don't have questions, and we're not learning anything. And so they know now, and it's funny to watch. So we'll have speakers come in to speak to our staff, and they're like, any questions? They're like 83 hands go up. Actually, not 83. We only have 20 on our staff. So like 20 hands go up. But it is awesome to be with you guys. So be able to write questions down. Because here's the worst thing that I could do is come in and preach to you something or teach to you something that you already know. And I know that God, the Holy Spirit, can use whatever I say to help you. But I actually want to get into what you're dealing with. And if I've learned anything, try to pass it on, or to share with you something that I've learned from somebody else that's not mine, because I'm a pastor. We are also thieves. We steal stuff and make it our own. Come on, somebody. I met with Pastor Stephen Furtick a while back, and he's been a great blessing to me in our growth season. And I told him the first time I met him, I said, I owe you an apology. I said, because our team, whenever I got a team to help with social media, they would frequently tweet something that I said, and I'd be like, nah, you got to delete that. That wasn't me. That was Pastor Stephen. I just didn't give him credit. Oh, come on, man. Come on. We're going to have a good time. I do want to first tell you a little bit about me and about what God's done in our lives so that you can have context. Just so you'll know, I don't lead with this publicly, but with pastors and stuff, I'll tell you, because it's just been such a shock that we've been able to be a part of this. We started our church 3 years ago, and when we started, we did an interest meeting. So if you're here as a church planter and you haven't launched yet, there's great strategies to do it. Don't think you know how to do it the best way. please find somebody else. And if you're like, well, God told me, be really careful with that, because sometimes that's a caveat for, I just want to do it my way and I don't want anybody to be against it, so God told me. So when you throw the God card down, it takes any godly wisdom from other people out. They won't share it with you because God told you, and they're not going to come against you. I'm talking to somebody up in here right now. But I learned a lot. So we did these interest meetings, and the very first one I'm a marketer by trade. I was a political consultant for 6 years, so media marketing, messaging is very important to me. I was a press secretary on a lot of political campaigns, local, state, and federal, Republican, Democrat, Independent. And so I learned a lot, and I knew, like, you have to make people want to be a part of something before they want to be a part of something, right? You have to make them want it before they actually want it. You have to give them the desire to be a part of what you're doing. You don't have to just do what you're doing and then pray that they come. In fact, a lot of churches ask the wrong question. The question that they ask is, how do we get people to come to our church? How do we get people to come to our events? Pastor, tell us how we get people to come. And the question that I ask them back is, why are they not coming? That's the right question. The wrong question is, how do we get them to come? The right question is, why are they not? When you remove the roadblocks, people will come. All right, and we'll talk some more about that, and we'll get into that. But we started marketing on Facebook and social media, Instagram, Twitter. If you're not really good on that stuff, you need to find somebody who is really good on that stuff. And if you think you're really good on that stuff, you might not be really good on that stuff. So find somebody who's younger and ask them, do you like our social media page? And ask them to be really honest with you. And then when they say, yeah, it's fine, then say, okay, you're not being really honest. I want you to be really honest. What do you hate about it? And just let them, and don't be defensive about it. Let them tell you, well, I hate all the stuff that you do, and it's weird how you always use churchy phrases like church on fire, hashtag somebody call the fire department. It's weird, don't do stuff like that. Sacrifice the sacred hashtag. Find somebody to help you, because that's your biggest front door. I would tell you your social media presence is bigger than your website as far as a front door for your church. And here's why. Because your website is who you say you are, but social media is who other people say that you are. Right? The website is not interactive, right? Even if you say, we have an interactive website, you really don't. Social media is interactive, because then they can comment on what they think of you. And churches that turn off their Facebook ratings probably got a whole bunch of bad ratings. So you leave those on and let people, listen, we police that stuff carefully. If we get a bad rating, we want to communicate with that person. We want to find out, what experience did you have that caused you to give us a 1 star? And we had somebody not long ago, they had a bad experience in kids ministry. We reached out to them, we made that right. They hadn't taken that 1 star down yet, but it's cool, we're praying for their spirit. But you want to make sure that your presence is strong, and so that's how we launched our church, with a really strong media presence. We did a 6-month prayer challenge. We said, what would happen if a church 6 months before they launched prayed every day for the city that they were launching in? What would happen? And so we did that for 6 months. Every day we prayed for a different group in our city, and it caught some wind. And a lot of people started retweeting and re-Instagramming and reposting that stuff and praying. And when we came to our first launch meeting, we actually had a facility booked. And one of the guys on our team called me and said, "Hey man, we were pushing. We wanted to see if we could get 200 people to come to this interest meeting." And he hit me up and he was like, "Hey man, we've had 113 RSVPs." And I was like, "Dude, that's awesome." He was like, "No, kids, 113 kids." RSVP for our kids. We were going to do childcare, and we were like, dear Lord, okay, that's like a great problem to have, but now we've outgrown the facility that we were going to actually launch the interest social in, so we had to move to another facility. We only had a week to book it. If you know Houston's a massive city, and it's hard to just book something in Houston on the fly. It's going to cost you a lot of money. So we called around to everybody that we could think of, and we finally dealt with Minute Maid Park. And they said, we have a baseball bar. We'll give you 80% off because you're a 501c3, and you can have your interest social in the baseball bar overlooking the baseball field. And I was like, that's awesome, because we're a church and we're starting in a bar. I love that. And so we had about 400 or 500 people at this interest social, and it was amazing. Like, I was blown away. We had built it up on Instagram and blown it out. We had a bunch of people kicking the tires, and we had 11 people give their lives to Jesus at the interest social, which was amazing. And I knew at that point We got a tiger by the tail, and so we got to figure this out. And we launched 6 months later, and we launched with more than 1,200 people in a high school, and it's been meteoric since then. I can't tell you how we did it, other than the fact that we try to be excellent in everything that we do. We challenge everything. We do not have a culture of change. We have a culture of evaluation, and we teach our team all the time, everything that you do will be evaluated. And we want you to evaluate. We teach them how to ask questions. In the next session, I'll teach you questions that you should ask your team and questions that your team should ask you. We evaluate everything. And through the course of evaluation, I'll also show you the strategy in the next session of when you know that it's time to do something different. I'll teach you how to do that. I'll at least teach you the model that we've used. And God has blessed it. It's been incredible. And so we're 3 years in. And I have a video, I think, maybe, an Easter recap video of Easter this year. We're very aggressive with faith. And we booked a facility this year, and then I thought about the size of the facility that we booked, and then got really scared and prayed and told my wife, like, what if nobody shows up? That'll be a fun thing. And in fact, the first weekend that we launched, that happened to me. I was nervous, and 15 minutes before service started, we had blown it out. We had marketed, and 15 minutes before service started, I walked out and I looked, like peeked behind the curtain, and there were 4 people. 4 people. Like sitting, at least they were close to the front, right? They're in the splash zone. You know, they're going to get some holy anointed spittle on them. There's 4 of them, but we're going to get them saved. And then I went back, and my wife was like, how many are out there? And I was like, 4. She was like, oh, Jesus, oh, dear God. And, but I didn't realize how late Houston comes to church. And so they showed up. But we rented a facility this year, and just to give you context, again, this is not in any way braggadocious. I would never want that to come across. My heart is to help you and to teach you and to learn from you. But to just give you context of what's happening in Houston, I want to show this video. It's the Easter recap video. If you could roll that, that'd be great. The worst day of your life could be the day that God redeems everything. To you, a tomb looks like the ending, but to Jesus, a tomb looks like the beginning of everything. Doesn't matter how many times you fail. It matters how many times He loves you, how many times you get up. With Jesus, failure is never final. So that's what happened with Easter this year, and it was amazing, man. It was amazing. Again, we don't publicize our numbers. We do keep copious numbers, and we look at all of our metrics, because metrics tell me how we should do things differently. And if we had great numbers on a certain weekend, that means our marketing was great. If we had terrible numbers on that weekend, our marketing was bad. And we track all of that. We had 21,000 for Easter this year, and we average about 10,000 on the weekend in 3 campuses. And in 3 years, that's crazy. We've had more than 16,000 people give their lives to Jesus, and all glory goes to God. It's just giving you context. The reason I tell you that is because I have learned that God is using us, and it's amazing to be a part of, but God is using us to inspire pastors, to let them know that, hey, I'm still moving, I'm still doing amazing things. And the fact that we get to be a part of that is an honor that is very humbling to me. But I want to show you where we started and how we started and what some of the things that you should be looking at. Vision is not the most important thing. Oftentimes we lead with vision, and Jesus did not lead with vision. Jesus talked about vision. He said, go ye, but He dealt with values on a daily basis. And there's a reason why sometimes you're saying something and the team is just not getting it. You ever felt that? Like we're telling them vision and they're just not getting a hold of it, and that's because they don't understand the values. If I lead from my values towards my vision, the culture will correct in between. That's how it should operate. It should start with values, move towards vision. Values never change, folks. Values are who we are. That's who I am. In fact, Jesus said, I wrote it down, Matthew chapter 20, verse 25, Jesus called them together. This is the disciples. He said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. That's who they were. They lorded everything over everybody else. I'm bigger than you. I'm badder than you. I'm tougher than you. I'm more successful than you. That's who I am. Respect me. And he said this, 4 of the most important words that you'll ever find in the Bible. He said, not so with you. That's not how we operate. Here's who you are. Whoever wants to be great among you, and I love that because there's nothing wrong with ambition. I want to do great things in the kingdom of God, but he gives me the key. If you want to be great, you must become servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So most of us understand the vision of the church, but we don't understand the values of the church. So you have to be values-based. The values of our church are not even original, y'all. We didn't even have time to come up with original values. Pastor Chris Hodges is my pastor, Church of the Highlands, a phenomenal church. And when I heard their values, I said, that's my values. So what you'll learn from me as well is I'm a copycat, and I don't need to have credit for something that somebody did. I'm very happy to give credit to somebody else and say, listen, we weren't original with that. That was something we learned from them. And if you're not like that, that may be why God's not giving you some great things, because you don't have the ability to share credit with somebody else. You want to receive the glory, not give the glory. If you're willing to give the glory, then God will bring you from glory to glory. So our values are very simple. We have a strong love for God. We have a strong love for people. We pursue excellence because you never catch it. You always pursue it. And if you're a church planter, how many of you are portable? You're a portable church. Anybody portable out here? We've got a few portable churches. How many of you have a building? You have a building? You have a church building? Okay, so here's something that I've learned, okay? I love excellence. I want excellence in everything. I am blessed with an eye that I notice everything. Pastor, you do that? You come in, you're like, how am I going to get them to ever see what I see? Why can't you see what I see? Why can't y'all clean up it just a little bit? Come on, man. I got really frustrated with my team a few years ago, 1 year after we started. I met with Pastor Chris, and that was my question. How do I get them to see what I see, Pastor? It's frustrating me. He said, well, if they could see what you see, then we wouldn't need you. Okay, let me write that down. He said, that's why God has called you to be an overseer, because you see over. You take them to the level that God has called them to live on without getting frustrated that they're not on yours. So pursue excellence, but you have to decide when good enough is good enough. Now, this is hard for me to teach. I've never even taught this before. I'm kind of shooting from the hip right now, y'all. Good enough. I hate good enough. I hate it because I want everything to be awesome, but we ain't got the money for everything to be awesome. So I'm praying for the money for everything to be awesome, but I have to decide whenever my desire for everything to be perfect is actually hurting our people. Okay, so good enough is good enough whenever, you know what, people are coming in, people are getting saved, lives are being changed. We don't have to spend $40,000 on more lights, even though I want more lights. I want to spend $1.5 million on lights. God bless, I just want what Hollywood has. Can we, Jesus, can you redeem that and just bless our church with that? Let the Egyptians pay for it. Come on, somebody. We say all that stuff, you know. The Egyptians are going to bring the blessing in, you know. By the way, just simple note, if you're a preacher, sacred cow number 1. You're either going to love me or hate me by the end of this, but if you're a preacher, listen, don't stop changing your voice when you get up to preach. It's weird for lost people, okay? They come in, they meet you in the lobby, you're like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. God bless you. Yeah, so glad you're here, man. Yeah, it's awesome. Tell me about your wife and kids. And you get up to preach, you're like, right now there's an anointing resting on the prophet of God, and I'm going to wear this mantle. Hallelujah. I'm too anointed to be disjointed and disappointed. Come on, somebody. It's like, hey, Elijah, chill out. Go back to the Old Testament. You know what I mean? It's weird for lost people. And I'm not saying you can't get excited. I get excited. I'm like, ah! I do all that. And then sometimes I'm like, can't hurt my throat. It's calculated, y'all, because, you know, I'm a preacher, okay? I'm a preaching preacher. I come from a preaching family. I can preach. I can wisdom. I can do all of that. God's unstoppable, unshakable, unmovable, unbreakable. All that, you know, all the alliterations that we do. I was in a dark, dusty, dry desert. He was a deluge of deliverance. Come on. I do all of that. I do all of it. I pull out a handkerchief. I'll wear an 8-button coat. I ain't even scared right up in here. But if it's not helping me reach the lost, it's got to go. It's got to go. You got to decide who you are, who God's called you to be, and who He's called you to reach. Now, having said that, I'm still a preaching preacher. I still get fired up. So I have to understand when I get fired up, I need to bring it back around. And so exactly what I just said to you, I've said to our church before. I'll pray, just scream and holler, and then I'll say, ow. That kind of hurt my throat, guys. And the lost people are like, that was funny. Like, I thought he was freaking out for a minute, and then that's funny. It's all calculated, okay? You have to decide who you're going to be, and we're always pursuing excellence, but you got to decide when good enough is good enough. And you have to decide, is the thing that I'm pursuing actually going to help me reach lost people, or is there a blind spot that I haven't seen that I'm not focusing on because I'm so focused on this one piece that I want to make better? And then the last thing that we do is we choose joy. This is our values. We choose joy. We choose joy. Everybody say choose joy. Choose joy. Choose joy. Choose joy. So we are value-driven, not personality-driven. So if somebody says, well, it's just not my personality to be happy all the time, it's like, good thing we're not personality-driven, right? We're values-driven. And one of our values is we choose joy. Well, I just don't have joy. Well, the joy of the Lord will be your strength. Well, how do I find joy? I don't know, but the book of Psalms says, make a joyful noise. And I did an exegetical hermeneutical research on that word make, and it literally means make. Sometimes you have to make joy when you don't have it. So if you want to lead your staff well, make sure that it's values-driven and not just vision-driven. All right, let's do something real quick. I want everybody to hold your hands out like this right here. Hold your hands out like this right here. Okay, both hands like this. And here's what you're going to do. I'm going to set this mic down for just a second. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to cross your hands over. Interlace your fingers like this right here. Yes, 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 yes. Now listen, on the count of 3, no, do it like this. Interlace like, yeah, there you go. On the count of 3, don't do it until I tell you to. You're going to turn your hands over, not inside out. You're going to turn them over, okay? Ready? Everybody ready? You watch it? Okay. 1, 2, 3, like that. Right. Okay, sorry. Okay. Check it out. I'm a communicator. I must have communicated that wrong. Okay. All right. Interlace. Interlace again. Okay, then on the count of 3, we're just going to turn them over. 1, 2, 3. Anybody? Did anybody see it? Anybody? Some of you are still trying to stop. It's impossible. It's impossible. You're going to break your wrist, all right? So here's what happened. Here's what happened. I told you to do this, and then I did this. Oh, thanks, bro. God bless you, man of God. Thank you. You're making me look bad with the muscles and such. And then I just did this. See, some of y'all still don't have it. It's cool. God loves people with a low IQ as well, and you can still be used in ministry. Here's the point. I was saying one thing, but doing something different. I operate from my values, so I can tell you who the vision is and where the vision is and what the vision is. But if that's not who I am, it won't matter what I tell you. Listen, you have to learn how to communicate from your values. You may have bigger vision. You may look at somebody else and go, we have bigger vision than them, but yeah, they're just better communicators than you. The better I learn how to communicate from my values towards my vision, the culture will correct in between. Values is always the same. It never moves. It never changes. We are who we are. Vision is always moving forward. Culture shifts in between. Now, this is a hard lesson that I learned because culture changes, folks. I thought culture should always stay the same. It doesn't. We had a culture of scrappiness in the beginning. We're all in. Everybody sits at the same table. That don't work for long. We had everybody sitting at my dining room table. We're a startup. It's crazy. We're going to get after it. Then we started another campus, and I was like, Everybody's at the table. Everybody's a part of everything. It's way too much. And it wasn't collaboration. It was collaboration, and that's a whole different animal that you don't want to be a part of. Well, then I had to learn, we're scrappy, but we also have to be strategic. So we had to have a culture shift, and anytime you have a culture shift, you're going to have people that get hurt, get offended, get frustrated. I'm not at the table anymore. Why am I not at the table anymore? So you have to communicate from your values. So if my values are strong and it's not just vision, then when culture corrects, they understand we're still the same people. This is who we are, but how we operate It's culture. How we operate. The how might change from time to time. And this is where the church has died. Because we don't like for the how to change. We like for the culture to stay the same. No. That's the song we always sing. No. That's who always sings the song. No. That's when we always do the watch night service. Help the people, Jesus. You have to learn. The culture's got to shift. It's got to shift. So what I want you to do is look at the culture of your church, look at the values of your church, and if you haven't written down the values of your church, what's my time, bro? I don't have a timer. 10:58. Somebody just give me a timer. Like put like ever how many? Listen, this is what I want you to know. There's some. You got to learn to confront this. You'll lose what you won't confront. You can confront without being confrontational, but you'll lose what you won't confront. And if you're a senior pastor in here, it's really important for you to create a culture of evaluation. Now, you don't need people that are constantly evaluating you and always ripping on you. If you've got that, then you have somebody in the house who's going to create a problem. But I need us to have a culture of honor. I want us to honor the pastor. If you don't honor your pastor, shame on you. You need to learn how to honor your pastor. You need to learn how to serve your pastor and try to take a weight off of him. Don't blame him for everything. If you're on staff, your job is to take responsibility that he has given you and be able to say, that was my bad. You know what I tell people that we hire, and we only have 20 people. We have a 10,000 member church and we only have 20 staff members. Here's what I tell our team. You're going to have responsibilities that far outweigh your ability to complete them. The two prerequisites, with the exception of having our values in your heart, the two prerequisites to be on our team, on our staff, is that you can solve a problem and you can build a team. If you can't solve a problem and build a team, you're not going to be able to lead. Now, I know people who can solve a problem, but they can't build a team. All right? Those people are valuable and they have their place. They just shouldn't be leaders. On the other hand, I know people who can build a team, not necessarily solve a problem, but I can work with a team builder because I can put a problem solver with them. You have to be able to build leaders, because when I build leaders, it expands me, okay? So when I put something on somebody on our staff, I expect them to do what they need to do to figure it out, to make it happen. Now, I can't just give them something and be like, here, fix this. That doesn't work, y'all. God didn't exemplify that in creation. Think about it. He created the first man. The first man was Adam. Adam was the last thing he created with the exception of Eve. So he created everything else first. And he created perfection. Think about it. Garden of Eden, perfect. Then he places man inside of perfection, not chaos. And he gives him a job description, name the animals. We don't do that. We create man first. Come here, bro, I'm dying. Come here, stand on my hand. Look at all this darkness around you. What if God had said that, Adam, look at all this beautiful darkness. I'm getting ready to create some stuff. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I need you to go ahead and start thinking of some names for some animals, and you go ahead and get this thing organized, okay? I'm relying on you to fix this brokenness. That's what we do. We place people in the middle of chaos and expect them to fix something that they don't even know how to fix it. So here's what we have to do. We have to actually sit down and come up with a strategy, and we're going to talk about that in the next session. Come up with a strategy to fix something, give somebody a job description. Guess what happens? All of a sudden, the health of your organization goes through the roof because people know what they're supposed to do. They know who they're supposed to talk to. They know how they're supposed to do it. And then they can actually execute the job. So you got to spend time figuring those things out. It's really important for you to do that. You got to confront the things that you don't like to confront. So we're going to talk about culture just for a minute, and we're going to shatter some myths. Just so you know, people don't want a friendly church. Notice the silence. People don't want a friendly church. They want friends. See what I mean? We're the friendliest church in town. Awesome. But nobody's getting invited to do anything after the service because we have a friendly church. But we're not actually connecting with people. So you have to share these things with your church, okay? Here, we're a friendly church, but we want to create friendships. This is why you need to be in a group. It's a group. I explain a group to you. Cannot take for granted that they know what you're talking about. For us, if we talk about Growth Track, which is our next steps process, hey, you come to this church, you want to know what your next step is. Okay, what do I do next? We have a 2-step process called Growth Track. Step 1, you learn about our church. You kind of kick the tires. You don't have to sign anything. You don't have to become a member. You just learn about it. The next step happens the next weekend. It's a 2-step process. And in the next step, you learn about yourself. You learn about your purpose. You learn about what God has called you to do. It's amazing. It's eye-opening. In fact, a lot of times we have husbands and wives just freak out in that class. They're like, now I understand you. Because listen, God wants you to grow. In order for you to grow, you got to learn about you. So our 2-step process happens first and second weekend of every month, and the third and fourth weekend of every month at all of our campuses. We would love to have you be a part of Growth Track. Notice how we just explained it. But if you get up there and go, hey man, today we're having Growth Track, we're having a discipleship class, we're having that part where you learn how to do the next thing, it's going to be awesome, be there at 11:30. They don't have any idea what you're talking about. You have to realize lost people, when they come in, new people, when they come in, they want something from you. They need to know what they want. So you tell them what they want. What do they want? They want to learn about themselves. I'd love to learn who I am. You mean husbands and wives have epiphanies in that class? I want to be a part of that class. Does that make sense? So you have to understand the culture, and culture is everybody's responsibility, and you have to model the behavior. Okay? You have to model this behavior. This is really important for you to learn. There's a ladder somewhere. Is there a ladder? Did I have a ladder somewhere? Is there a ladder back there? Maybe. I'll go back there and get it. I'm coming. I found it. Don't be afraid. Here am I. Check it out. This is a ladder. All right, this is a ladder. All right, now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to teach you how to balance. I'm going to teach you how to balance things, okay? Culture balances everything, all right? So values, vision, culture in between. Okay, so we have to have a healthy culture, and healthy cultures don't happen. They're created. Okay, you have to inspect the culture of your church. Do we have a culture of kindness? Do we have a culture of honor? We say we treat kings like normal people. We treat normal people like kings. That's one of the cultures at our church. Well, what does that mean? We don't have any big eyes or little U's. We want to serve everybody. We want people, whenever they walk into our church, to feel like that we think they're somebody else. That they're like, they think we're special, because we do. And then we have celebrities that come to our church sometimes, and we want them to feel like normal people. So we teach our team, don't take Instagram pictures of the football players, don't take Instagram pictures of the singers or whoever's coming. Don't do any of that. We will reserve a seat for them. We'll take care of them, but we want to make sure that they feel normal. Does that make sense? All right, that's the culture. And culture connects us with values and vision. And culture balances everything. So I want to show you something. I learned a trick a long time ago. How to balance a ladder on my hand. Do we have insurance for this event? All right, I'm going to show you. It's a neat little trick, okay? And honestly, I could teach you how to do this. You can balance anything that you can actually hold up the weight of. How about that? Somebody give me a great big hand. It's pretty awesome, yeah? Okay. All right. Does anybody want to learn how to do that? Anybody? Anybody? Come on. Come on, bro. You're huge. Come on. Get up here. All right, come on. We'll come to this side right here. All right, all right. I don't know how coordinated you are, but I'm assuming. I mean, you work out and such. All right, just pick it up, 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 pick it up. Yeah, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there. Okay, all right. Now, do your best to balance it on one hand. All right, give him a great big hand. Give Jeff a great big hand. Come on, y'all, give him a hand. Come on, that's great. First time. All right, you can put it down. You can put it down. You can put it down. Come on, give him one more big hand. Now, thanks, bro. Now, I want you to notice he automatically adjusted to something that you need to learn how to adjust to, because all of your people are doing the same thing. If you want to balance anything, did you notice what he did? He didn't look at his hand. He looked at the top. And wherever the top went, the base corrected. So I can't just get mad at the base whenever they're not doing what I want them to do. We lead from the top. So if I want them to be kind, I have to be kind. If I want them to be godly, I have to be godly. If I want them to be prayerful, I have to be prayerful. If I want them to be honoring, I have to be honoring. They are watching the tops, and wherever the top's going is where they're going. So if you don't like the culture of your church, you don't like you. If you don't like the culture of your campus, you don't like you. Culture tells me who you are. It shows me your values. So it's important that we correct this in every area. And I'm telling you, when people understand the values, everything goes back to that. And now we can grow. Why? Because culture will correct us back to the values. We won't do anything that's against our values if our values are strong. So if you haven't written the values of your church down, you should write those down. All right? Now listen, you don't have to have some big planning meeting to figure out the values of your church. You can if you want. I would get a small group of people together and go through that. If you want to come up with clever phrases and all that stuff, you can. We just didn't have time to do that. We just like, yeah, that's our values right there, so we're going to do that. But you can do whatever you want. You got to have strong vision. The reason this is so important is because everything and everywhere that God is taking you relies on this. People that are coming in can see your values more than you realize. They can see it. They know who you are more than you know who you are. And this is very scriptural. Let's go to, let's turn right now to the book of 1 Kings. Chapter number. That's when a pastor can't find a verse of scripture. And right now, we will turn in our Bibles. I can't find it. 1 Kings chapter 10. 1 Kings chapter 10. Now when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to, I'm going to ask you questions during this, so listen to what I'm saying. She came to him to test him with hard questions. Who did she hear about first? Solomon. She heard about Solomon before she heard about the Lord. All right, she heard about Solomon and she came with questions. The Lord was not the central part of why she even came. She heard about this amazing place, this amazing leader, and she came with questions to figure it out. In fact, we know that she didn't even believe what she had heard was true. So she came to disprove what she had heard. She came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue. This is important for you to know, with camels that bore spices, very much gold, precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she spoke with him about all that was in her heart because he was accessible. So if you're getting carried around on a carpet by your armor bearers, you may want to do an Old Testament study of armor bearers because armor bearers killed a lot of kings. I'm not against having somebody who helps you. I need people who help me. Listen, there's a guy in our church. He's from Nigerian descent. Shata Oluwashita Abidakun. You can't say his name. You got to learn how to say his name. That's the first thing that I learned with Shata. We call him Shata for the white people so that they can say his name. Oh, it's funny. I learned his name because relationship is built on me knowing who you are. And if I can't say your name, then I don't really know you. You got to know the people around you, know who labors among you. And Shata is a wonderful man. He's got a master's degree in occupational therapy, and he will carry my Bible. I have to wrestle it out of his hands. But do you know the reason he does that? Number one, because he's a very honoring man. But he also watched as I forgot my stuff all the time because I'm a little bit ADHD. You know what ADHD is? Attention deficit hyperactive. Hey, look at the butterfly. That's how I roll right there. I'm serious. Anybody else ADD in here? For real, diagnosed. I'm not making fun of it. For real. Not on medication. On the Holy Spirit. That's what I'm on. And he noticed that, and so he helped provide some help for a need. All right, now, very easily, listen, very easily, I could abuse that. Now, be careful because what ultimately happens, and I'm talking to senior pastors, I want to be very careful how I address this, but ultimately what happens when you have people that are taking care of all of your needs, you become detached from everybody. You become detached from everybody and anybody, and you don't listen to anybody. I promise you, people will king you when you're not the king. People will king you, you'll think it's your kingdom, and it's never been your kingdom. It's not supposed to be your kingdom. It's supposed to be his kingdom, and I better be careful that I'm not building my kingdom. Having said that, I love a culture of honor, and I think it's important that we honor a pastor because it does help him do his job better, okay? So I think there's two sides to that, and it can be damaging on both sides. So Solomon answered all of her questions. There was nothing so difficult for the king that he couldn't explain it to her. You gotta know why you do what you do, because people will come with questions. You better know why, because they will make you figure it out. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen, everybody say seen, she had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built. Listen to the list that she goes through. The food on his table, the seating of his servants, the service of his waiters, their apparel, his cupbearers, his entryway by which he went up to the house of the Lord. There was no more spirit in her. Boom, she fainted. But it wasn't just Solomon that blew her away. Then she said to the king when she came to, she said, it was true, the report which I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom. However, I did not believe the words until I came and saw with my own eyes. Listen to what she saw. Indeed, the half was not told. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame which I heard. Happy are your men, and happy are those servants who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. Then we get to verse 9. Everybody say verse 9. She said, blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you, setting you on the throne of Israel. It took everything else before she got to, look at what the Lord has done. Now, what blew her away wasn't Solomon. She expected Solomon to be good. My wife made me go 2 years ago to the Nutcracker Ballet in downtown Houston. I did not want to go, but the tickets were like $98 a piece, and she bought them, and I was like, all right. And we went, and we got there, and it was like an hour and 30 minutes of like people dancing and such. And at the end of it, I was like, all right. And she was like, intermission. I was like, oh, dear God. We had a whole nother hour and a half. I was like, this is longer than church when I grew up as a kid. I could sleep under the pew right here and get a good nap and still know what this thing's about. I expected the people on the stage to be great, right? Can you imagine if you went to the ballet, you paid $98, I'm still mad, a ticket to get there, and your boy came out like it was me? And I was like, welcome, plie. Demi plie. God bless you. Y'all have a great week. Y'all be like, nah. You'd be mad. Why? Because you expected me to be good. You expect what's happening on the stage to be good. What you don't expect is the kids' ministry to be amazing. For the greeters in the parking lot, not to try to tell you where to go. Notice I call them greeters in the parking lot, not to try to tell you where to go, but to wave at you and greet you and say, come on in, welcome, we're glad you're here. It's the culture of the house that brings people to Jesus, not the depth of your word, and not just how good the music is. The culture of the house has to be built on the values, because people can tell whether it's healthy or not. And when they come in, here's what will happen. They'll go, I want to be a part of this. And they'll be attracted to you, and they'll be attracted to the culture before they're even attracted to God. And then when they have that moment, they have that blow them away moment, like this blew me away. We chase down every cultural idiosyncrasy in our church. We want to make sure that the friendly people, the greeters, that if you have a C personality and you don't like people, you probably shouldn't be a greeter. But we have an admin team that you would love to be on, because you get to check all the boxes and make sure everything's getting done right. But you're in a closed door. You're off over here behind the closed doors, because we know you'll be like, no, you're not supposed to do that. Oh, we need you over here. You're on this team. Everybody's valuable, but you got to have them in the right place, or it'll jack up your culture and you'll lose people. And if you don't teach them how to evaluate, you will love somebody so much that you'll leave them in a position that actually creates pain for new people, but you love them and you don't evaluate anything and you're scared to confront. You will lose what you won't confront. Notice, here's what's going on. Here's what's going on. Here's what's going on. I'm not done yet. Not done yet. Because here's what happens. In verse 10, then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, spices in great quantity, and precious stones. There never again came such abundance of spices as the Queen of Sheba gave to the king of Solomon. And if you're rich and somebody rolls in and gives you a gift like nobody else has ever given you, that's a big gift. And here's what I want you to understand. The big gift was already in the house. It was the culture of the people that brought the gift out. Everything you need is already in the house, but if your culture is messed up and not representative of your values, the people that God has sent you to take you into the next level will not give to you what God has given to them to give you, because you haven't evaluated who you are, where you are, and why you exist. But if I won't have sacred cows, and I'll really look at it and say, okay, some things we got to change. Some things we got to change. Then guess what God will do? People will pop up in your church, and you'll be like, I didn't even know that guy went here. I didn't even know she went here. And I'll tell you, it happened for us. Thanks, bro. I thought y'all would have me a towel. Y'all don't know how I was raised. I have a big old towel covering up my whole head preaching up in here. If I was bald like you, I would preach with a towel on my head. You know how John Gray preached with a towel on his head all the time? I preach with a towel, man. Sorry. ADD. God's called you, but you got to evaluate it. You got to be real honest. There's people in your sphere of influence right now that know what you need to do better. They're just afraid to tell you. Pastors, don't be afraid to look at people on your team and say, listen, we got some areas we need to shore up. If you're here and you're on staff or you're on the volunteer team, I want you to go to whoever your direct report is. That may be the pastor, maybe somebody else. And you need to say this exact phrase. I know that I've got some blind spots. I know there are areas I need to improve in. Will you help me see them? Would you help me see them? I want to foster a conversation between you that your direct report, your pastor, has been afraid to have because he's been afraid that he would hurt your feelings. He loves you so much. She loves you so much. They've placed you in that position because they love you. They believe in you, but they want to correct some things, but they're afraid that it's going to hurt you, and then they're going to have to rehabilitate you and get you back to life because they love you. And listen, I'm too spiritually mature to be easily offended. Come on, somebody. I'm too spiritually mature to be easily offended. That's another cultural statement that you ought to write down, and your team ought to know that. I'm too spiritually mature to be easily offended. I'm going to go pray through so that we can keep going through and do what God's wanting to do through us. Okay, questions? Any questions right off the bat? And then I'll hand it back to you, Pastor Obed. Is that who I handed it to? Jeff? Any questions right off the bat? Yeah. They're afraid to tell you. They're afraid to tell you because they're afraid they'll offend you. So they know, they already see, they see where you need to improve. Does that make sense? Can I take 2 or 3 minutes and do questions? Any other questions? Yes, sir. No, we only had two steps. So Highlands does 4 steps in Growth Track. We do 2 because Houston is such a mobile city that we realized it was taking people 9 months to get through Growth Track at our church. Because in case you don't realize that church attendance has changed, people don't come every weekend. If you're mad at that, just get over it because they're not going to change that because it's changed. It has changed. It's different now, y'all, okay? With online church and everything else. So you can beat them over the head and tell them, you ought to be here every time the doors are open and all that stuff. They're just not going to do it. So why make them feel bad about it? I want to make them want to be there. So I encourage them for being here, and I make them wish they'd have been here last week. Boy, last week was amazing. If you missed it, go back on the podcast, check it out, watch it. It's awesome. But we give them opportunities to go through Growth Track. So they have 2 opportunities every month to go through the same class. Any other questions? I'll try to answer questions fast and not belabor them. Any other questions? Yeah.
So much. What are some of the questions you ask yourself or you ask your team to ask themselves when evaluating the process of having
I'm going to do that next session.
Okay.
I'm going to actually give you 6 questions that you can ask and that you can have them ask. Any other questions? Anybody else? Don't leave one on the table. I'll take 2 more questions after this. 100%. Yeah. We'll get it to you, and then you can make it available on the blog or whatever. Absolutely. Basically, what we did was we took what Highlands did, and if you haven't ever been on the Grow website, growleader.com. You can go on growleader.com. They give you free resources. Is that okay to share that? They give you free resources, and honestly, if you get their stuff, you'll notice all we've done is change the names of a lot of stuff. You do not, please stop wasting time creating things that have already been created just so you can say you created it. You know what I mean? Lost people don't have any idea. You know, honestly, we play Pastor Chris's videos. We do a Freedom Conference, which is one of the most important things that we do. And if you want to know more about that, I can talk to you about that. We do a Freedom Conference, and we have people Spirit baptized at this Freedom Conference like crazy, like over 400 2 Saturdays ago. And it's just an incredible thing that we do. And we took all of the content from Highlands and took out, did a name search and took out, replace, name replace. And we replaced Highlands with Hope City. And replaced Pastor Chris with Jeremy. You know what I mean? But then at the conference, he preached such a great message on the Holy Spirit that I just played his video. Literally played his video. It's like, hey, this is awesome. This is my pastor. He's here. Not really. He's on video. Check it out. And 600 people's lives were changed. So It's one of the things. 2 more questions. Yes, ma'am. No, you can say you said it. I don't care. You don't have to give me credit for nothing. I probably didn't say it anyway. Well, I can't infuse DNA. He said, what do you do with somebody who's got values that are contrary to your church? I can't infuse DNA in them. So I have to confront that. And I have to have a hard conversation. Listen, you can't be a leader if you don't want to have a hard conversation. We don't have to fire anybody. They fire themselves. Okay, so here's how they fire themselves. We have a hard conversation. And the first hard conversation is, hey, I need to talk to you about our values. This is our values, and there are some things that you're doing that aren't showing these values. Is that something you mean to do? You need to get used to saying this. Listen, when you say blank, I feel blank, help me know what you really mean, because I don't know that that's what you actually mean. That gives them an out instead of, hey, you need to straighten yourself up and get in line with the church, by God, you devil. You know, that's create problems. When you say or when you do, I feel or we feel, help me understand. That's conversation 1. Okay? Now, if it is a cultural problem or values problem, they don't get it, then I say, listen, this has to change. And here's the benchmarks. We give people 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on how much work they need. And then they go talk to their direct report. Folks, this works. We'll talk about communication systems in the next session. But it works because here's why. If they're not meeting their benchmarks, please hear me. You got to do this. You can't just get mad at somebody and be like, they got to go. They got to go. Both of our campus pastors that pastor amazing campuses outside of our broadcast campus, at one point I said, Pastor, they got to go. They don't get it. One of them pastors a campus of 1,800 people. The other one pastors a campus that's 9 months old with over 800 people. And they're phenomenal. But we had honest conversations where I was able to talk to them. Guess what? They grew, and here they are. The last conversation that we have is the this is not working conversation. This is not working. We love you, but this is not working. You've got to be able to have those conversations. I think that was the last question. I love you guys. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this.